What did you do as a kid that you only now realize was an inappropriate or bad thing to do? NSFW. I helped my little brother up onto the toilet to take a dump. It was a display model in a hardware store. That's fucking hilarious. Did he drop a legit log? He did indeed. Oh, this looks like a good toilet for my humble abode. Let's just take a peek under the seat and, whyyyyyy god whyyyy. When I was around 9 I discovered that my penis got hard and I showed it to my mom and sister one day. They played it off so casually, it wasn't until a few years later that I cringed. I hope they have forgotten, because it keeps me awake at times. Lol, I used to do this all the time. I ended up giving my hard as nails child boner the nickname of Frankenstein. Good times good, weird good times. My friend and I discovered boners about the same time and would whip them out whenever we would get one. Compare them side by side and everything. Childhood was fucking weird. When I was little, like 5 or so, I used to invite strangers to dinner and give them my full address whenever my mom would bring me to the grocery store. She stopped bringing me. Oh my god, that's fucking hilarious. I can't imagine a 5-year-old walking up to me and not only inviting me to dinner, but giving me their whole ass address as well. I used to do this to people online when I was like 7. Was definitely upset when I lost my iPod privileges. It wasn't even mine, it was my older brother's. Not sure this counts. As a kid I would spend a week at my grandma's house each summer. Would do odd jobs for her and get paid stupid amounts cause grandma is awesome. She was at work, I was out front raking leaves and guy across the street came over, asked me if I liked cars, sure, invited me over to see a Model T in his garage. I went over, it was a legit Model T, cool to sit in, and went back to GMA's house. Told her about it later and she informed me he was a convicted sex offender who spent time in jail for molesting kids. A warning would have been cool, granny. Considering there was actually a Model T and all that happened was you sitting in the Model T, I would consider that the good ending. Groomers spoil kids and make them feel important, special as a way to gain their trust before isolating and getting inappropriate. Around the age of 10 I was made to go to a birthday party of this one kid that I could not stand. All his asshole friends were going to be there too. My mom gave me a bag of hot dog buns to take for his dad who was going to be grilling for the party. I was so mad that I had to attend that I opened the bag of hot dog buns up and farted into the bag before swiftly sealing it back up along with the fart-saturated buns. It was really childish, but I felt vindicated watching the kid and his asshole friends eat my fart dogs. FARTDOGS. At around 8 I had my first orgasm on my elementary school slide that was cylinder-ish shaped. I tried climbing up the slide by gripping it like a koala and hosed myself up, discovered it felt good but had no idea why, and so I continued to climb the slide that way for the next 2 years all to get the same feeling. Little me crawling across people's lawns. He thinks he's a snake, silly kid. He is actually dragging his dick across the ground because it feels nice. I miss you, Andreas' parents' lawn. Please call me. Andreas' lawn has got it going on. It's well watered and the grass is so long. When I was like 7 I remember me and my uncle were playing around and he bit my neck like he was a vampire. This left a mark on my neck which I now know was a hickey. My dad freaked out when he saw it, and when my mom saw, she thought I was touched inappropriately by my uncle, which led to a fight between them. I just now realized that giving hickeys to your niece was not normal. My uncle used to hold me down and lick my eyeballs. I didn't realize how truly fucking bizarre it was until decades later. Just kind of hit me one day after I turned 30. The fuck was wrong with Uncle Josh? Sodium deficiency, sounds like. I was horribly mean to my little sister. I thought it was funny at the time. My sister was horrible to me. She was mean and called me names. This was more than 2 years ago. We have a decent relationship and we are parent ourselves. The other day I don't know how the subject came up, but she gave me a sincere apology. And it meant the world to me. I cried and cried, not in front of her but later when I was alone. I didn't realize that the apology would be so healing. If you haven't already, please apologize. I went to my sister's wedding and she surprised me by asking me to be the ring bearer, and apologized for high school being so difficult around her. I cried like a child and I didn't even realize that it had hurt that much. My sister, her friend, F, and I loved to play house, and I was the mom and they were my children. One day they pretended they were babies and I had them suck on my nipples. Looking back I don't know how we didn't all realize how wrong this was. Bro, the things I am seeing here is actually wild. Imagine the shit people are actually taking to their grave. I know I am, lol. I considered making an alt to tell my story but I'm like, nope, it dies with me. Makes me wonder how many people do the same. Your handle compels me to pronounce the W, and I don't know what sorcery that is. My dad told me stories of his time in Vietnam. I was a little too young to hear it, and the ever-inquisitive child I was asked, "How many people did you kill?" He looked down for a moment and said, "I don't want to talk about that." I know I didn't understand the weight of that question then, but I do now, and it makes me sick to my stomach. I am now 31 and it still hurts. Hugs to your father and you. Don't beat yourself up. I remember the same happening when army cops came to give speeches. The most haunting thing I ever read was a memoir by a flamethrower wielder in Vietnam. Forgiving myself is a work in progress. I know I was young, but I can only imagine the gut punch that question must have been to him. My dad is a great man and a good dad. I make sure he knows that every time I talk to him. Me and my cousin loved going to the quarry a few hundred yards from his house, wooded mountains, Catskills. We caught a lot of snakes, like Steve Irwin. A stick to pin them, then pick them up by the head. As an adult, learning more about snakes for camping safety and wilderness survival, a lot of them were copperheads. My mill tells stories of when she was a kid cracking copperheads and red belly blacks by the tail like whips so their necks would snap. Growing up in small country towns in the bush was nuts. Almost killed my brother. As kids, my older brother was really big into Harry Houdini and convinced my younger brother and I that he could get out of anything we put him in. We tied his hands and feet, then wrapped belts around him while he lay fully dressed in the bathtub. Then we turned the water on, put the stopper in, and walked out, locking the door behind us. We were 10, 8, and 6 at the time. Looking back, we could have killed older bro if he didn't have the skills. Our poor mother almost had a heart attack when her now adult children laughed about over beers one night. So he got out without any help? Oh yay, walked out pretty as you please after about 2 minutes. Pretty impressive NGL, I'm glad you almost killed him. Yeah, looking back as adults we collectively wondered what the hell was wrong with us. That's to say nothing of our antics with the infamous anarchist cookbook. Got caught masturbating by my high school girlfriend's grandma. 15 minutes later she offered me a drink in the presence of the whole family saying, "You must be dry." God, this reminded me of a time I was visiting a long-distance girlfriend at her mom's house. We stayed up fucking and doing whatever else for like 2 hours after everybody went to bed. We only saw each other every couple of months, so we made it count. I thought we were pretty quiet, until we were eating breakfast in the living room the next morning with her entire family and her mom walks in and says, "Hey, how are my little rabbits doing this morning?" I don't know what was worse. The fact that her mom heard all of the depraved shit that I did to her daughter the night before, or the fact that she was completely supportive of it. I don't know what it is, but no other potential mill was as supportive of me as my long-distance girlfriend's mother. We were like 16 years old and we were allowed to do literally whatever the fuck we imagined when I visited her. She literally gave us keys to her other apartment in the capital of Poland where we stayed the night smoking weed. 2 16-year-olds alone in a huge city. I do not understand what the fuck was she thinking. Getting her daughter out of the house so she and her husband could have some fun of their own, I suspect. My brother and his friends would go one step farther than slapping each other's butts. They would slide their hand up their butt cracks and say, "Credit card, over the limit." My 3-year-old self thought this was hilarious and used this as a natural greeting to every person I met for a very, very short time. I mean, it is pretty hilarious, just not if the victim is uninitiated. When I was 8 and my brother was 6, I once had my brother sit butterfly style with his legs and then jumped on his knees to see if I could get them to touch the floor. Now as an adult I am horrified at how much damage I could have done to his ligaments, muscles. Like it still keeps me up at night. Nah, a 6-year-old is flexible AF, I bet his knees hit the floor. Used to confuse the word sperm with phlegm as a child. I often got laryngitis, strep throat, so telling the doctor I had sperm in my throat made for a few awkward trips. I'm just imagining the sinking, bug-eyed feeling everyone in the room had to have gotten when you said that. Well, this is pretty gross, so read on at your own risk. When I was like 2 or 3, I put a little bit of real poop in my dollhouse toilet to make things more realistic. Ick. I just about choked. I pretended Tic Tacs were pills and I were overdosing on them. When I was like 7, I went around my neighborhood collecting money for a charity that didn't exist. The Human Fund? I was around 10 when McDonald's ran an ad showing people with Down syndrome running their registers. I got a lot of laughs from the adults around when I mimicked them. "Welcome to McDonald's, may I help you?" I'm physically cringing as I write this. It's my second worst memory of childhood. You were a child who didn't know better. The adults laughing at this instead of teaching you respect, that's the real cringe.